you once again for joining me, Harp, on whichever social media platform you're watching this. Just wanted to take a moment and touch base on perspective. So, what we have been discussing is how deep perspective goes and how your perspective impacts everything, not just your communication skills, not just what you desire to achieve in life, but your perspective, it will impact every portion of your day. That's how you and maybe me could be sitting in the same situation and have two different experiences. You know how they'll say an accident can happen and they'll stop and they'll, ask the bystanders, tell me what happened. And all the bystanders will have like some pieces of the same story, but a whole bunch of them will have all these different elements that no one else has. One person saw it this way, one person saw it that way. And that's just based on your perspective. And you would think that maybe even people in a shared community or, of a shared background would have more of a shared perspective. But many times, perspective is being acted out in behaviors that then cause us to clump together. And so even within the same communities, within the same cultures, you will have all of these clumps of people who are operating out of a certain perspective. It comes from your parents on what they went through, not just what they taught you. Because a lot of times I think even myself as a parent, when I went through it the first time and I was younger versus when I went through parenthood the second time and I was older and had, been through some things and had achieved, more education and, a broadened perspective, it was just different. It was different when my mind was in a different space. I reacted to things differently. Put it this way, when my oldest comes around, he's like, I don't understand what happened between me and this here. I don't understand. I helped raise my little cousin. He's the same way. He was like, you didn't do that with us. And so it's all about perspective. So if as a parent, you're telling your child one thing, but you're operating out of another thing, they are forming their own perspective based on this mixed, group of messages. And it's not to say that the messages are wrong. It's just the parent's perspective as well. When COVID happened, I did a little research on what happened during the Great Depression. And it was funny because they talked about the actual events that occurred during the Great Depression, but then what they also discussed was the mindset that came out of the Great Depression. It affected the way that people raised their kids. Because they had experienced this trauma, this financial trauma, it impacted what they made their kids believe was important. So, when you go through traumatic events, you develop these coping skills, these, ways of adjusting so that maybe the future you won't get caught off guard like that. And sometimes those things are great. Those are, those motivating forces, those make or break forces that propel you to the next level. But many times, if we don't know how to deal with these things, they can be the things that we then teach our children, that then put them in boxes, and that even put us in boxes, put us in rat races and doing things that ultimately are not changing with the times. They're not benefiting us truly in the long run because we're operating out of preparing ourselves to encounter this trauma that previously happened, and maybe that trauma isn't going to come back in our lifetime. Maybe that trauma, maybe our kids won't see it either. And maybe those life skills were good for that moment, but that doesn't mean it's something that needs to be adopted for a lifetime. And if we do not realize that we're operating out of skewed perspectives, then we'll just keep on reinventing it, recreating it, mishmashing it up with other people's perspectives, and never taking a moment to really be calculated about things, to inquire like, is this the only option? Is this the only solution? How you feeling? Have a great one! And so we have to realize we have to be calculated. We have to start being informed about the choices that we're making. We cannot operate off of yesterday's thinking. We cannot allow our perspectives to stay stuck in the past. The problem with that is the world is always changing. I mean, like, everything is always changing. You would be surprised if you just go a few hours over into another state and the way that they do things completely different from that state you just left. I mean, stuff as simple as how they check you out at the counter, in the grocery store. The technology that you're dealing with, you may think everyone's dealing with that technology. No, everyone is not, because some people are still operating off of yesterday's advances. They have not made the transition, whether it's because they don't like the idea of making the transition, they don't want to spend the finances needed in order to make the transition. You know, they're just people. They're just people who started a business. Whatever their story is, they're still just a person operating off of a perspective. On my next vlog, I'm going to pick a different spot here in Galveston, and I really want to talk about the African American perspective, because our perspective is limiting us. And as I just talked about in this vlog, having a yesterday perspective when dealing with today issues doesn't get you far. And when you're already behind, if you're already operating from a disadvantage, then you definitely want to make sure that you're checking your perspective. You want to make sure that you are, really challenging yourself to do the research, to look around online, like be purposeful when you're online. And I know that sounds like a drag and that's a dull, and everyone is not looking for this type of content. They're looking for something to make them feel good and for them to enjoy their day. And that's the difference. That's the difference between those who are able to keep it moving and making progress and those who drop off, is whether or not you're going to take the time to go beyond the surface and really dig deep and find solutions, find answers, and then figure out, okay, why are these not being implemented? What is the problem? What's going on here? I will close up with this. Martin Luther King, he was on his way towards pushing forward an agenda that involved all people. But the powers that be don't want all people to be on one agenda, one accord. Because there's a hierarchy. There's a hierarchy between those who have and those who have not. At the end of the day, we all contribute to each other. It's an international community. So we can't look at, people as in, no, you're over there, I'm over here. There's been times where I'll call places and they'll say, are you sure you know where you're calling? And I'm like, yes, I do know where I'm calling, because right now we're all in an economic situation. We're all facing a new day or a new way of doing things. We're all having to make a transition that none of us were really prepared for. No one said to themselves when they were creating their, annual goals and dreams that, next year the world is going to shut down due to some strange virus, and I'm not going to be able to do anything really for about a year, maybe a year and a half. Nobody said that. So that means that just about all of us are dealing with something that we didn't really plan for. But I do believe that historically, part of our solution has always been being around like-minded folks. Having people who understand that at the end of the day, we're all people, and our agenda should include people from all places. Because at the end of the day, at some point, we have issues that intersect. We have goals and dreams that would depend on the resources or the support of people beyond ourselves and beyond our circle, our immediate circle. We have to figure out how to broaden our perspective so that these things are not radical anymore. It has now become commonplace that no, it's not about self-preservation, nor is it about self-sacrifice. It's just about everybody finding their lane, finding their target audience, finding their like-minded tribe, and everyone just living cohesively. Now, of course, I know that this is like, one of those I love the world, save the world messages in some people's minds. But no, even if it in your lifetime, if all you ever get to see is your circle being built, and your circle becomes diverse, and your circle becomes beyond what it originally was, where it might have been maybe 1-2 people who said, you know what, we're like-minded, we have similar agendas, and we can work together in order to make something. And then before you know it, you built something, and then you have some more people come along, and the next thing you know, this is starting to impact people's lives, and you're like, woohoo, I'm doing something. That's all it takes. Like I said, everybody is just a person. In the same way, somebody was able to break that glass barrier and shatter those, glass ceilings. That's just because they kept pushing, they kept trying. And then sooner or later, something that was once a thought and radical to even, think, it was radical to even imagine. That same thing that was radical to imagine now is a reality. And boom, everyone is looking at them like, oh, how did you become a self-made millionaire? How did you become a self-made this or that? Because they did not give up. They did not allow the fact that it was a radical thought to keep them from chasing it. So be purposeful. Be purposeful, be mindful, be open. And then we'll all make it there. Until then, thank you so much for joining me, Jan Harp, on whichever social media platform you were watching this. Thank you for enjoying Galveston with me. This was definitely a good trip. This was an awakening We had a business coaching seminar here at the Nia Cultural Center. That was an awesome time. The Nia Cultural Center on the Strand. It was just a great time. 2217 the Strand. Check it out if you're ever in Galveston. Definitely leave a donation because they are preserving history. Yeah, just come along with the ride. Just come along with us for the ride. We're gonna do some touring of Galveston, and we hope that you enjoy it, and we hope that you take a moment afterwards and, you know, do a little digging of your own. Always be purposeful when you're on the internet. Seek out information, seek out things that are gonna propel you to the next level, and we just look forward to hearing about your journey. Don't forget to share it with us. Have a great, wonderful rest of the day. As I go around in this new venture, learning about business came at a cost, and the cost really felt heavy, and I just determined within myself that I really wanted to alleviate some of that cost for other people who are trying to get started, especially people who are trying to get started and they're coming from an economic disadvantage of a history, almost like a lineage of being disadvantaged, and just not knowing where to start. Hearing people say, oh, start with family, start with friends, and looking around for family and friends who have any experience with what you're trying to do, and realizing that no, I really don't have family or friends who can really help along this journey, not because they're not well-meaning, just because they don't know, or they don't have the time, or they never embarked on something like that, and it just becomes really, really difficult. And so being that the cost was so heavy, I said there's no reason not offer this proprietary information to people at a rate that they can afford, so that they can too get started in business and maybe get started and have a more level foundation at an earlier time, so that they can make up for what they're missing, make up for lost time, make up for lost resources, lost support, and make that leap and not have to have a prolonged journey. And that was the initial goal with the business coaching, was just to go around, talk to people about business, help them get started, give them a better leg to stand on. That was the mindset. And that was the mindset, to really help people get started in business. But as we've been traveling to different states and, really just asking people, what is it that you feel that you need in order to see your business succeed? What questions would you ask if you could be in front of someone who had the knowledge to answer that question? What would you ask them? And as we've been encountering people just from different areas of business, different industries, different, walks of life, different backgrounds, just as we have been encountering people, we have come to a realization on how deep and how important perspective is. And so I just want to take a little time and talk a little bit about perspective. I tell you, we have been here for a few days, and this little breeze, this is the most breeze I felt since I came here. When I tell you, Texas has no shade, no breeze, no, it's hot here. Someone angered God in the sun. It stays right there, always. We're going to get through perspectives today.